Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. Welcome back for another episode of Legal Tea. Today's topic is a current trend, something going on in the current time, or that I've stumbled across on the news or social media that is pertinent to my little estate and elder law world. Now, this week's episode is on whether it is appropriate or not for non-attorneys to help residents or soon-to-be residents of long-term care, so think like nursing homes, for example, navigate Medicaid benefits and Medicaid laws. You see, I've talked about this topic on here, at least a very similar topic before, but I recently stumbled upon an article written by Ted Sherman and Karen Price Mueller with NJ Advance Media, which is a news agency in New Jersey, about this very issue. And I thought, heck, let's talk about it again. So here we are. Before we dive into this topic and article, I think it's really important to get a good foundation on something that some may think they know, but they totally don't. So if I asked you, what do you think elder law is? How would you answer? And take a second, think about it. Should I play some Jeopardy music for you? Well, contrary to what many people think, elder law is not really just helping old people with things. What I mean by this is that, say, for example, I do a power of attorney or a will or a healthcare directive for someone that is 87 years old. That is still just estate planning. It's still just estate law. Elder law is more dependent on what me, the attorney, is doing for someone. It's not really necessarily about age, but I guess it kind of contributes to it. One of the biggest things that elder law attorneys help with, what elder law attorneys help with is families and clients understand what ways and options there are to pay for things like home health care, assisted living, and or nursing home. And specifically, if someone wants to gain eligibility for governmental benefits like VA or Medicaid, and not Medicare, Medicaid, to assist with paying for medical care like at home or a senior facility. So because of this, I, as an estate and elder law attorney, help families navigate gaining eligibility for Medicaid a lot. So this article on NJ Advance Media by Sherman and Mueller really resonated with me. And while it's written in New Jersey and even talks about pending legislation in New Jersey, the issues they touch on are big issues in every state, including here in Indiana, which is where this podcast is based from. I somewhat remember some legislation happening in Florida not that long ago, 5-10 years ago. So yeah, while this article is based in New Jersey, it's definitely a pertinent issue for all of us. Whether we're, in professionally the senior space, or we have family or loved ones that are seniors that may end up navigating something like this. All right, so now that we have that foundation under us, I think we can dive into this article and explain what is going on. So in New Jersey, there is a pending legislation that has been introduced by State Senator Joseph Vitale, who is a Democrat, and it's co-sponsored by State Senator Robert Singer, who's a Republican. And I mentioned the party affiliations because I think it shows kind of that it's relatively maybe a bipartisan effort. So anyways, they end up, as the NJ Advanced Media article states, this legislation would, quote, prohibit Medicaid applications assisters who are not attorneys from charging for providing Medicaid application assistance to nursing home residents or their families, end quote. And by the way, if you're a nerd like me, I did link in the source links for this episode, not only, of course, the NJ Advanced Media article, but to the actual bill itself, if you care to take a look. The article primarily talks about a company called Advanta Medicaid Specialists, which is owned well, it's now shut down, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But it was owned by a gentleman named Nissim Aryeh, who went informally as Sam, so let's call him Sam. Sam, as the article explained, would hang out in the lobby of nursing homes and provide free seminars about the rising costs of long-term care. And in those efforts, he told those that listened that he could help. So people would end up paying him between $3,000 and $9,000 to help them qualify for Medicaid to pay the nursing home. Advanta is not alone either. There are several of these companies out there in New Jersey, and I'd venture to say in every single state in the country. We definitely have them here in Indiana, for example, and I belong to a national organization of estate and elder law attorneys, and these non-attorney Medicaid assistance companies are often discussed in this community. As the article explains, first of all, this whole non-attorney Medicaid assistance industry is really unlicensed and unregulated. So while there may be some good and okay ones out there, without any licensing or regulations, it's just more ripe for not good things, right? And along these lines, NJ Advanced Media really dug deep and found, quote, allegations of deception, consumer fraud, and what state officials called significant financial loss to nursing home residents, end quote. An example of this is a lady by the name of Leslie Walsh. Now, Leslie's father-in-law, Joseph Walsh, was in a nursing home, and the family paid Advanta $6,000 to assist with Medicaid for her father-in-law, Joseph. And even though Advanta has marketing pieces that say, if we do not get you approved for Medicaid coverage, you won't pay a penny. Well, Leslie's father-in-law passed away before the application was submitted, and they paid the $6,000. And I get it. I'm a business owner. I'm sure Advanta did some work before Leslie's father-in-law passed away. But if that's the case, maybe they should be a little bit more wise about their marketing messaging out there. One of the groups that is not too fond of this pending legislation is the nursing homes themselves, for a couple different reasons that I want to talk about. First, they think eliminating the ability to refer to these non-attorney Medicaid assistance companies is unfair. That it's unfair to force families to work with an attorney for the Medicaid process. However, the article notes that if someone already qualifies for Medicaid, they can obtain Medicaid paperwork for free through various county agencies. So if someone does not already qualify for Medicaid, then the legislation would encourage those individuals to seek legal assistance. I get that, well, I kind of get it. I'm an attorney. I can kind of see both sides on pretty much everything. There are times that prospects land in front of me or someone at my firm where, honestly, they already qualify. And we sort of explain to them, like, hey, you don't really need to hire us to get qualified for Medicaid. You can hire us, but definitely don't have to. You already qualify. So in that regard, I think those in my senior space would really have to work out if this legislation were to pass, we'd have to just work out a better system between me, like the elder law attorney, and the nursing homes. Like, you, nursing home, take care of those that maybe already qualify or maybe almost already, qualify. And we, the elder law attorneys, will take care of those above, say, XYZ amount. It's doable, but it'd be a bit of a change, and we know how people feel in general about change. Now, a second reason nursing homes are not big fans of the pending legislation is because, as the article notes, there is somewhat of a conflict of interest between the nursing homes and the residents and the nursing home residents and the Medicaid assistance companies that they recommend. And here's why. So nursing homes pocket more money from those that private pay rather than Medicaid paying. So if, a nursing home resident, let's call her Susie, has too many assets for Medicaid. The nursing home, rather than sending Susie to get, legal advice, legal assistance to protect assets and get qualified for Medicaid, the nursing homes are having Susie pay privately until she's almost out of money, and then they'll refer him to the Medicaid assistance company, who will swoop in later to get Susie qualified for Medicaid. So there's kind of this inherent conflict of interest, like bias there for the nursing homes, right? Whether they admit it or don't realize it, that's on them. So like in the article, they interviewed an elder law attorney named Gerald Rothkopf, who shared, quote, "It's a self-referral. They're talking about the nursing homes. They're not acting in the residents' best interests. They're acting in the best interest of the nursing home because that's their food source. That's where the money's coming from," end quote. And I can't say I really disagree. It's probably because I'm an attorney. After all, like I said earlier, I don't do any litigation where, I actually have to argue about things, but I can usually come up with arguments on different sides and different perspectives. So, here on this issue, it's got a lot of competing interests and a lot of interesting perspectives to understand. I did an episode number 66. I went back and looked before I recorded, which if you care to listen, it will definitely complement this episode. And one of the things that opponents, especially these non-attorney Medicaid assisters, something that they say of the pending legislation as kind of part of their argument is that elder law attorneys are super expensive and are just, flat not needed for some people. Well, on episode number 66, I dove into this very thing. The primary reason that attorneys are sometimes more expensive than these companies, and which, by the way, to be honest, him charging $3,000 to $9,000, the Sam guy, is actually spot on what we would charge depending on the type of case and whether the client was single or married, etc. Anyway, the primary reason is because practicing attorneys have to carry just many more expenses than non-attorneys, and I will make this argument until the day I die. Like, we have to carry very expensive malpractice insurance. We have to pay dues for our bar associations, the local bar associations, the state bar associations, national-based groups and associations. We have license registration fees and renewal fees from the state of Indiana. We have to pay for mandatory continuing education courses. There are costs to gain access to online research platforms that provide us access to cases and rules, etc. And do I dare even bring up how expensive it is to go to law school? Which, of course, non-attorneys don't have to go. The list could go on and on. So, yeah, we may be more expensive or as expensive, but it's for a good reason. It's to protect you, the consumer. That's why. So if you care to know what happened to Advanta Medicaid specialist and Sam, who sat in the lobby doing seminars and stuff, well, the NJ Advanced Media article notes that Advanta ended up getting shut down and that Sam ended up reaching a settlement with the state of New Jersey in October of 2022. And he reached a plea deal of paying like $38,000 in restitution and a requirement to perform community service. And on the pending legislation, it'll be really interesting to see what transpires. Leslie Walsh, the one that used Advanta for her father-in-law, shared with NJ Advanced Media that, quote, "The proposed legislation is sorely needed." And she applauded any legislation that makes the public more aware of their options and consequences of the decision they make over nursing care, end quote. We'll just have to keep an eye on this legislation for sure. And I'm certain other states too have started to or have already came, down on these Medicaid assistance companies run by non-attorneys. Like I mentioned earlier, I remember hearing some similar mumblings happening in Florida, maybe 5-10 years ago. So I think this whole topic and issue will be one that more and more states grapple with and try to figure out and how to tackle. So be sure to be mindful of this episode. If you work professionally in the senior space and or have a loved one that ends up needing care, whether at home or long-term care, and Medicaid is something that needs to be discussed, just remember this episode. Alrighty, let's wrap this episode up. Next week's topic is on estate planning of the rich and the famous. And on that episode, we're going to be diving into what happened estate-wise following the passing of super well-known singer and songwriter Barry White. His estate will give us the opportunity to learn about a little nuance in estate law that is often not known about until it's too late. So tune in next Tuesday, Legal Tea listeners, as I dive into his estate. Talk to you then and stay well.